Welcome to Leadership Unlearned and Reframed. In this podcast series, we are asking you to suspend all that you believe and know about leadership. We are asking you to unlearn what may no longer be working for you or things that you're thinking about and saying, that no longer suits who I am. And because we're taking away from you, we don't want to leave you without anything. So we're offering you reframes of leadership. Every week, I chat with a guest. It may be somebody who's a leader themselves or somebody who's adjacent to leaders, a coach, a consultant, anybody like that. And so we examine from their frame, their thoughts and their experiences of leadership. When I speak about leadership, I'm not only speaking about leadership in an organization or a workplace setting. I am asking you to consider what would it be like if you were to take up your leadership mantle in your family? It's very much needed in our communities, even your place of worship or your local netball or football team. So, on Leadership Unlearned, today we have with us a guest, as we do every week, and our guest this week is Jarrod Best Mitchell. Welcome, Jarrod.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you, Maxine?
I'm fantastic, having a good day.
Nice.
And you?
Yes. I would say quite a good day. There's a lot going on right now, and I love the days when you literally don't have a minute to breathe.
Hmm.
It's those are fun days.
Hmm.
So it's now
So,
getting down, it's now slowing down. So that's good.
yeah. So you like being out of breath?
I like being busy. I think a full calendar, I appreciate strangely enough where I'm going from one thing to the next. Mostly because I know the things that will probably be on my calendar is the things that I want to do. It's never something I don't want to do. So like you get excited for the next task ahead. So for me, it's a great day. It's a very, very good day.
Okay, so you like busy, and it sounds like the reason why you like busy is because there are things that you want to do. So it's not this just busy for busy sake. It's really being very oriented to you, I guess your vision or your purpose, and the reason you do the things that you do.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
and then even on a more slight note, which I think more persons could relate to, it keeps me away from just doom scrolling on my phone or not doing something that's productive with my time. So I think like even just now before this call, like an hour before, I just started to deep dive into something I'm preparing for a client, and I'm just like, ooh, I'm like, and I just took my dogs for a quick walk, and I'm telling my daughter, I'm like, no, I need to get back quick because I have questions in my mind that I need to get answers to, and I'm like, that's the days I love because I'm getting to do the things I enjoy, so can't be more grateful for that.
Okay, good. And so you mentioned your clients and you mentioned, questions in your head. What exactly do you do for these clients?
Oh, so in just to put it simple, I help clients make more money. I help
Mm,
clients increase their profits, their revenues, and that is done through helping them figure out and understand what their sales problems are because all revenue is generated through sales. And whether it's through training their sales team or formulating the strategies or looking over the entire sales process, which is what I'm doing for this client now. My goal is just to help persons sell better and I think it's incredibly easy in this market and economy that we're in right now. It's just that nobody likes to adjust their strategy because we so hold it dear to our heart. This is what we've always done. Okay, great, but revenues are down 30%. So are we going to do this next year or are we going to make a change? So it's a really good time and I really enjoy the work that I do and the ideas that I come up with. And more importantly, the clients who are on board and say, hey, yes, let's do it. So that's why I say it's cloud 9 for me.
great. So you're helping people make money. That's it. And
Yep.
so I'm wondering, and it sounds like you're working in the sales within the sales frame,
Yes.
doing training, the strategy, I guess the execution of the strategy. So you would be in touch with sales leaders, leaders who are in sales. And
Hmm.
so what are some of the mistakes that you see that one of the things you mentioned was holding on to strategy. What else do you see that may be hampering sales leaders from making their money?
Oh, well, can I add on one thing? It's because of what I do, it's not just the sales leaders, it's everyone. So from the CEO to the HR
Okay.
manager, everything. But if I were to add on the fact that sales leaders and companies are holding on to what they do, if I were to add on something else, the next thing I would add on is that they aren't holding sales reps accountable. And that
Mm,
is frustrating me. There's a lack of accountability, and I'm saying it for both ways. There's there's a huge lack of any sales manager wanting to reprimand employees because they may not have HR's back in, they haven't done it in the right way. Everybody's afraid of industrial court. So a lot of sales managers are afraid of reprimanded employees for not performing. And even on the same end now, which is crazy as well, when you have few performers who are actually performing well, they aren't celebrating them to make sure the organization understands what excellence is and that this is what we want and to try and get more persons too. So when you create that area of lack of being reprimanded or coaching for excellence or coaching out, the issue that you get now is that you have a huge amount of people just being mediocre. It's not going to be people who's rising to look at the top stars. It's people who are going to be like, oh, so I don't have to hit sales target. All right, well, let's just relax because there's zero accountability from their manager. They know they're not going to get a warning letter. They know they're not going to be fired. So for them, it's like, let me just sit back and relax.
That sounds really strange. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm really surprised to hear that because I'm thinking a sales environment should is very target oriented. You either have a number of units or a dollar value that you're targeting. And so what do you think is leading to, I think you mentioned a few things that lead into that accountability, right? The fear of the industrial courts not being supported by HR.
yeah.
And it seems to be very counterintuitive.
Yeah. And the thing is, you may be shocked, but you could ask
Yeah.
any one of your colleagues, ask them how many persons on their sales team are not performing. Then ask them how long have they not been performing. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, so these guys probably have warning letters, etc. And you may hardly see it. The only industry I think that has this in place to an extent is like the insurance industry for advisors, but other than that, no. But in case of other industries, the problem I see is that it's correct. Management doesn't have the backing sometimes from HR and in several ways. HR doesn't guide them on like the simple tasks, like for example, documenting everything. Even if you're sending a verbal warning, you document after that we sent you a verbal warning. Then there's a written warning once, written warning twice, three times, etc. Then there's coaching. A lot of them don't go through the right practices. And because they might not have that guidance from HR, by the time they're ready to take effect, and again, I've known this from talking to companies, because it took so long to take action, that behavior exhibited by the rep is now considered the norm because industrial court is going to watch you and be like, why didn't you correct it earlier? Because now everybody's thinking that's the correct way because you have never said anything. Even as something as simple as the rep is coming late every day, then all of a sudden you give them a warning letter. Why didn't you give them a warning letter the other 30 times?
Yes. So the
So,
managers have set a precedent, and that precedent is too late to correct it. And one of the things you said is that HR didn't tell the managers, and I'm wondering what questions are the managers asking, as well as how were the managers trained? Because
yep.
I've been a manager when you get your first managerial job. These are things that you sort of ask about or read a handbook. There's an employee
Oh,
handbook. There's a
well, you might
company
you might
handbook.
like this. You might like this. So here's another shocker for persons. Most people in sales who are sales managers weren't promoted because they're good at managing. They were promoted because they were a top
Good
performer.
at sales. Yeah.
And that
Well,
is the
yes.
biggest mistake companies make.
Yeah.
Because all the time I keep saying, top performers are exhibiting one key trait. They are lone wolves. They are not farmers. They
Yeah.
are lone wolves who do it on their own. You
Yes.
have to find somebody who's able to exhibit that leadership quality without having a title. And most times it might be a mid performer or somebody who's really good at one particular task. But in most of the cases I've seen, it's always a top performer that they put into the role, and therefore that's why they don't have that guidance, and sadly they don't get the training to even understand some of the leadership skills and stuff that they have to do for them. They just operate like normal. Like I'm continuing selling because I'm not really managing. I just need to sell. I just put into this position. So yeah, it's quite
Yeah.
interesting.
I would support that across functions. And I think that is a real, that is something that we really need to change in terms of promotions because you'll take your best accountant and make them the accountant manager, and that person is focused on numbers and not on the people. You will take your best IT person and put them as the manager, and that person is going to not exactly create a team. So there's something about performance how it's defined
Yeah.
versus the behavioral components that we want to see in our leadership or in our managers. And somehow those two things are not talking to each other when we're making promotion decisions.
Yeah, it hardly ever talks to each other. And I think that's why, as I say, from a leadership perspective, sales always suffers because it's never, in few cases, this person who get the opportunity because they've demonstrated the leadership ability. Sometimes it's just a position they've been given, and therefore that's the person in charge, and there's no formal training, and therefore people don't necessarily see it as a leader. And I think companies, and again, it's not just sales, but companies underestimate that when you have an organization that's missing a leader, like for example, your sales team might not have the right sales manager involved, especially in a super competitive environment, that instantly impacts the morale of the staff. Because one, that manager in a lot of cases may just be trying to save their own backside. They will push everybody under the bus. Therefore, it creates the wrong type of culture. It creates a huge amount of distrust, and therefore that disrupts the way the reps sell because everybody now is just kind of watching their back versus selling. And again, a manager's job is to make sure your team could sell. Like that's your number one priority. So as I said, it's really interesting that as important as it is, it's something that's rarely given and just assumed for salespeople. And I think because they get into that role over time, those things just keep happening. Like there are very few sales managers, I think, that create that culture of it's an excellence culture. So if you don't perform, you're going to be coached out,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I think if managers had the right support, which is the only thing I would give them support on, is that most sales managers today need support and they don't have it because if you're in charge of a sales team, there are actually two roles. It's not just a manager role, it's a coaching role. Because a manager is the one really looking after the numbers. The coach is the one who's going to take the management information to coach the specific reps and the behaviors and the attitudes and the skills. That's how you coach up and you coach out. But if you don't have that given, then everything is left up onto a salesperson who's in charge of a team. And notice why I'm saying this. A salesperson who's in charge of a team who now has to lead a team, manage a team, coach a team. And in most cases, they manage the team because that's the only metric that companies are looking at. And therefore, now all the other things fall on the wayside because it's not that important. And they look at the numbers and not necessarily anything else.
Yeah, it sounds, I feel sad hearing it. No, I really do.
No, I don't
Because
feel sad.
yeah,
I
because
wouldn't say
I
it is
can't
how
even,
it is, but yeah.
yeah, because I can't imagine. I mean, the problem sounds cultural in terms of after a while it's ingrained in the culture of the sales team.
Hmm.
The idea of these maybe 5% top performers, the rest of people are just mediocre, really just coming to work and clocking a card. And so how do you get those people motivated to start to perform? They mightn't be a top performer, but and they probably could move from being mediocre and get to good.
So I think so. Like if so the things I'm seeing now, like if I'm a sales leader, there's a couple things I'm pointing out. Like, do you understand what is really the motivation for those individuals? Because yes, we pay them money, and the mistake we keep thinking is because they're sales reps and they pay the commission that they'll automatically learn to sell. But you need to understand what is that driving factor? Like, what is the thing they use the money for? Because that's what you need to push. What's that bigger purpose to those individuals? Because that's what you really need to focus on. And if you're just trying, as they say, lead them the wrong way by saying numbers, 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 and they don't understand what they need to do to get to the numbers, like what's the fuel they need to put under themselves to get the numbers, you're not going to get them making that change in behavior. So for me as a sales manager, if you understand that why, that's when you could like that's when you're not even looking at the numbers anymore because the CRM will show you a dashboard and you open up your conversation to be like, hey, Maxine, like you told me your goal was to pay off your mortgage this year. What's going on with the performance? What can I help you with? Because it's not where it's supposed to be, and I'm not seeing your behaviors acting like you want that paid off. What has changed? And that
Mhm.
that to me provides a different discussion versus you're not selling. If you're not selling, you'll get one warning letter. And the thing about it is many managers do this, despite the fact it's clear to, and I would say to me is that if you have a rep who's performing, and it depends on the level, even if somebody's performing, let's just say 60% of their quota, not hitting 100%, and all of a sudden that drops, something happened.
Yes.
And as a leader, this might be difficult to do, but I had a discussion with a rep recently was performing well in the last quarter of 2025. This quarter, the performance has dropped, right? And the rep said, hey, couple of personal things going on, so I'm just trying to balance it off. It's throwing them off. So I said, hey, here's what I need from you. We have 24 work days because they work Monday to Saturday. I need you good for 16 of those 24 days. You get what I'm saying? I'm like, because at the end of the day, if those things disrupt you, I understand. I don't want you to say ignore it because that's irresponsible of me to ignore it. What I would tell you to do is I want you to find your reset. So when those things happen, we need to reset. Sit down and listen to music, separate yourself. I understand. But I know I'm not going to expect that from you. However, if I look back at your performance and I could see and we set the metrics of these are what your top activities mean. So like on the days when you work good for 16 days, I need this level of performance. Once I see that, I'm not having a conversation with you. You on track to hit your quota. But once the numbers are down, I understand why. So my conversation with you as a leader is completely different because now it's like, how was it today? Because I know this is one of the bad days you're having. My focus is on you mentally because I need you back for the 16 days. Because I understand 8 days I can't get you. I
Yeah.
can't. So I think that's in all means, but again, is if the manager has that ability in them to identify it and also to wanting to spend that time to help her rep with it. And of course to document it, because again, even for HR purposes, you need those things documented and agreed to so that you could coach your rep either out, depending on the behavior, or you coach them up where you realize over time they get over it and you're able to help them out. And in that particular case, I think when you explained it to the rep that I need you good for 16 days, they saw it in their face like, okay, I could do 16 days. Like you saw it in their mind because sometimes as a leader, you have to provide the solution they don't know. So a rep is sitting on frustrated thinking, all my days are going to be bad. But no, it's not going to be bad. We have good days. So I think that's what they need to do.
So I'm really hearing a process there in terms of step one, identify what is really important to this rep. And everybody
Hmm.
has a different why. So identify the why. It could be that they want to pay off the mortgage. Maybe they want to send their kid to a particular school. So first establish the why. Two, use the why in an ongoing and continued conversation, especially when you see that the sales has dipped or their quota has dipped. Then you say to them, hey, remember your why, because that's your role, right? That's reminding them what it is. And when you realize that performance dips, don't wait. Have that conversation about what is going on with you, and you'll learn what's going on with them, and then you can help them to find a way forward. So we just got a
Correct.
process from Jarrod there in terms of how to change it up for your salespeople.
Can I go back on one thing though? Can I just say one
Absolutely.
factor? We should also pay attention to the leader's ability. Because I remember in my earlies, I had a sales manager, and that sales manager wasn't capable of being expressing any empathy to people. And the thing is, it wasn't a bad thing if you get where I'm coming from. Because for me, I understand how some people are. I literally saw like this, it wasn't like they literally couldn't express this emotion. And I remember there was a rep who came back from surgery, like, and they came in the office just to submit sick leave, etc. And the sales manager saw them. And instead of just asking, like, hey, everything okay? The manager was asking something about work that they needed to follow up on. And the person called me and she's like, I was gonna cuff that person down. And I'm like, you don't understand. They're not seeing it that way. They're seeing it as this is the only thing I could talk to you about because I don't know how to have any other type of conversation. So part of it, which is more the executive, the senior leadership team, you have to ask yourself, is that leader the right type of leader to drive what you want from a sales organization? Is their style good for the culture and good for the type of team that they're managing to get the results that they desire? Because if you have a leader like that, trust me, like it's chaos.
Nothing is
It's
going to go on.
I won't say
Yeah.
nothing goes on. Like people sell, but at the end of the day, like you like I'll give you my personal example. That person, I remember, like you move differently because, for example, you know your leaders are good at some things and not. I remember when I was closing off a deal, I never told my boss, my manager about the deal. I actually lied about what the deal was. So let's just say if the deal was, hey, I'm doing 5 units. It really wasn't five, it was 500. But I
Right.
knew if they got into the deal for that type of customer I was dealing with, I'm like, no, they're gonna ruin that deal. So I had to keep them out of it. So when the deal was finally bought in, and they saw it was 500. The manager was pissed, and I was just like, hey, um, I don't know if you know this, but your style would have ruined that deal. And I'm just being honest. I was like, that's why I brought you in at the last stage. That's why you've only seen it when it's signed. So I think management needs to understand, does this leadership style work and does it drive the numbers that you need to drive? Does it keep the team motivated? Is this person able to hold people accountable, coach people out, hire the right persons, develop superstars? And it may sound like a lot, but at the end of the day, that's the role you signed up for as a leader. And that's the responsibilities that you have to take on. You have to be able to do these for these persons because that's your responsibility in developing them.
One of the things that you shared there is really about your ability to manage upwards. And I'm wondering if for the sales team, if that is a skill that you actually pass on to them, because sometimes in organizations, they put their best salesperson there, that manager is going to stay there until they retire. And so the team itself needs to also understand how to manage upwards. And I'm wondering if that's something that you share, because that example that you gave was you managing upwards. Do you help your do you think there's any relevance in that in some of the work that you do? Have you come across actually doing that with some of your clients?
In the sense of where somebody's just in a role and you know they're going to stay there forever and that's it.
Yeah, and they're not
Um,
going to necessarily change their behavior, so we need to change the way we operate around them.
this may sound crazy. I either do not work with those companies or
Mm,
those persons are left out of my training and any aspect in terms of what the company regards of what my training success looks like. So even recently, I had a company again doing training with them and they explained a scenario with one of the sales reps. And they just said, oh, this sales rep, I think one person said they've only seen him twice and he doesn't come to meetings, etc. And I just said, cool, that person doesn't come in my training. That doesn't get held out against me in terms of anybody's performance. I'm like, I have zero interest in that. So I think part of what I've learned over these years is that unless management wants that change, that's not my responsibility to change. And sadly, I've seen it many times, and I'm not saying this is graceful, but again, it just shows why they're in this bucket. Like there've been many times when I go into companies and you could see the immediate red flag. They whisper, Chad, Chad, okay, so um you would write a report for us and give us your feedback on people, right? Like how their attitudes are and if they're good for the organization. And I always say, hey, that's HR job and the sales manager job, not mine. I can't get somebody skill sets from just training them over a period of 6 weeks. You've been with them for 5 years. Like, that's not me.
yeah.
But because they know what they're dealing with, that is an immediate red flag. I'm like, that's not my responsibility. So I hope everybody heard that whisper, but that's literally how sometimes the conversation goes. And I think I did like what, 15 companies last year. I'd probably say five had that issue. And
Mm.
and when you hear that issue now, you're like, that's a bigger issue. And again, even for my recommendation, I when I have conversations with companies, a lot of the times I actually tell them it's not a sales training issue you have, that's a leadership issue. That's something that leadership needs to take over and have the ability to deal with first. Because remember the thing from my end, even if I'm training for 6 weeks, that's sometimes like twice a week for 3 hours. When you look at that in the aspect of you are spending 220 days with this employee, what my impact is there but not as much as that sales manager's role. So they're the ones who are responsible for making sure they could coach and get them into the right mindset and help them out. That's not really my responsibility to figure out if somebody is fit for a job or not. I mean, you could tell it based on certain signs, but at the end of the day, if I could see it, you should have seen it and you should have taken action. The responsibility is not mine. If you think the person isn't fit for the role and they're on probation, sorry, send them home. That's your job as a leader. And I believe in this thoroughly. Most people, like when you have that gut instinct, it tells you they're not good for this sales job, but they're probably good in another sales job. So let them go to that sales job. Why are you keeping them here to, again, create that culture of mediocrity? Oh, we only bring in people who can't sell, who can't do this. That's going to ruin the entire team. So it's definitely their responsibility.
Yeah, I'm hearing that is another example of where you started in terms of that lack of accountability. This is
Yes.
another way in which it's being framed and another way in which you're experiencing it. one of the things that you spoke about and you did share how you coach in, you keep saying coach out. What exactly does
Yes.
that mean and how does that work?
Coach out means when you realize somebody and I'll go to it. Let me start from the beginning. In any sales team, you're always going to have 10% who are top performers, 5 to 10%. Then the other 80% are going to be average performers, and that's broken up into two groups, high average and low average. Then you're going to have the bottom performers, which literally means me, you, Jesus, Allah, call every single God. Their sales will never change. They're going to be like that. Those persons we need to coach out. Even the bottom average, our goal is to figure out those bottom average needs to come up because at the end of the day, we need to create that culture. So for me, coaching out means you have to start identifying and showing the person that, hey, we're showing you where your performance is. We're showing you where your performance needs to be. We're identifying what your gaps and problems are. It's prospecting, it's time management, it's organizing your day, and we create a plan, right? You're not following the plan, no problem. We start telling you warning letters, verbal warning, and we start saying, and actually, at the beginning of that, we actually start saying that this plan is for us to know if you're a fit for the organization. So I think immediately you have to start changing your language with this person that we are doing this to see if you're a fit and if it's long term or if it's just more coaching that you need to get up to the level that is making sense for us to keep you on. And once you stop seeing it, you need to start changing your language. If you're seeing it, you change your language. You say, great improvement, we like how things are, you're no longer in a PIP. But if you're still not performing, you're gonna say, hey, we have not seen this change, we're not seeing a change in behavior. And you can literally put such a language like, I don't see this working out,
Mm,
and they're seeing it added on because you're showing them the warning letter. They have proof that the performance is going down. They're just not getting it. And again, it could be because they're not making the effort. They made a bad hire, or it could honestly mean that they're not suited for this job and they really need to be somewhere else. And I think
mm.
if you go through that natural route, it may take some time, but I think it gets that person out. And again, it creates the culture of I would say excellence because people understand that I'm here to perform. I'm not here to just sit down and collect a paycheck.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned was about, releasing that person to find their fit somewhere else. So what are the requirements that the market is asking for salespeople? I know like with insurance people, when you meet somebody and they can real talk, you say, yeah, you should be in sales, boy.
Oh God, I get that from day one when I was like 21 years old, and I kept telling people the thing is even back then I was like, yeah, but it's not for me though. Like I don't see myself doing that. I had nothing against insurance because I had insurance from early, but I was like, I don't see myself doing that type of job. So for your question, um, the number one thing I would say is that if you want to hire somebody for sales, they need to be coachable. And I don't care what level you're at. You cannot tell me that you're a 10-year employee. I don't care if you're in the business for 20 years and you want to come in and act like you know it all because you can't come in and change your culture. What it means is that you'll literally just be a opposite pole on a magnet and you're repelling yourself away from everything and it's going to take you longer. So I think your ability to be coached is incredibly important. I think the other aspect now is your grit and resilience because just last week again, I was talking to some sales reps and I was giving them a strategy and they both said, hey Jarrod, and I feel awkward going up to people because they'll tell me no. And I said, yes, but no's get you to yeses. I was like, so I'm willing to get a no. I'm really okay with getting 7 no's to get 3 yeses. 100% okay. So I think for a lot of them and a lot of people I meet in sales, they literally do not have that mental fortitude of somebody hanging up the phone, somebody saying, I'm not interested, or even you're going through the customer proposal stage, you reach right to the signing stage and they tell you they go with a competitor. I think a lot of them haven't even gotten that mental aspect. And I think that's what they need to be in for if it is that they truly want to be successful in sales. The other thing I would say, of course, is um, be curious and and I mean curious in the aspects of what works for me is that when I go into companies, despite the fact I'm doing research, my question is still trying to understand why. Like I think you probably know, you know how Toyota has the five whys. It's almost like that same format of and I was doing this with a client the other day. It's like we really want to change the industry in terms of what we're doing. Why? Because we've been doing it this way for a while. Okay, so why I want to change the way you've been doing this? What's wrong with the way you're doing it? Well, da, 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 da. Okay, so why do you want to do that versus what you're doing now? And like you have to keep drilling down to understand it. Like you can't just pitch, pitch, pitch. Like nobody wants a pitch. Like the best thing to do is understand exactly why somebody wants to buy. So I think if you have those particular skill sets, more than anything else, you can train them afterwards. Like if they don't like, and by the way, for anybody listening to this, sales reps don't need degrees. Please stop that. No offense. I think skills are more important, and we've seen it worldwide. They need to show you that they have certain skills. So, in other words, have they worked with a CRM before? Are they utilizing AI in their daily processes? Could they have a testimonial for somebody or show you exactly how they're selling? Like that. A degree doesn't do that. And no offense, there aren't no degrees in sales yet. Like there are, but not for what people are looking for. They keep
Yeah.
saying, I want somebody with marketing. So that to me is how I look at it.
So that's on the end of the person walking in the door, getting a sales job, the grit,
Yeah.
the resilience, having some sort of knowledge of CRM, those pointers. And for the organization,
Hmm.
what the organization needs to do differently in their hiring process or in terms of the people that they hire, in terms of what you're seeing. So I would imagine one of those would be, okay, we don't need degreed people to do sales.
So what I'd recommend is, I think the first thing HR companies have to do is document what is excellence or what is a good sales rep. Like, and because when you look at a job description, it doesn't come across in that way. It just come across as roles and tasks versus what does a day in the life look of a successful rep and
Mm,
how do you get there? And then the second thing, of course, is are you giving them the infrastructure? So in other words, I see too many companies want to tell reps, you're responsible for doing billing out, finding new customers, billing out this, doing the CRM, everything. And I'm like, the salary doesn't depict that. And I think they underestimate how much time it takes to build out those things. Despite the fact we have great technology and AI and everything now, it still takes time to put it into place. So I think from a management perspective is that the more you give the rep everything they need to succeed, the easier it is for you to figure out would they be successful or would they be a failure and we will fire the failures. And that
yeah.
means it saves you time because if you have it done right within that 3 month cycle, actually I'll go so far as to get them a 4 or 5 month probation period. So immediately you could tell, oh, month two, you could look and be like, yeah, Jarrod, mm-mm. We could sit down in a meeting, and the thing is, you're paying attention to the behaviors and the skills that they're adapting to learn versus necessarily the performance. It's the activity you're looking at the individual. Because if you're starting to see those things really working well, now you have it in your mind, okay, he may have it. Nah, he needs to be on the chopping block. He's out. Because you have it measured based on certain numbers versus just looking at job descriptions and roles. And then you're not looking at the skill system when they're out in the field, they're not able to perform.
Mm. Yeah, so there's a little bit about the role itself versus the
Yeah.
tasks that they are required to do. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
there's always that conflict for sales teams in terms of we have so many admin functions to do, it's almost near impossible for us to be effective in sales, because
Yes.
yeah. Hmm.
Yep, and that's because companies don't have that technology, a lot of the technology implemented. So statistically worldwide, sales reps actually do about 60% administrative work versus actual selling. So the thing I always tell companies, you have a fix for this. You can implement AI and technology to automate some of those admin processes. A lot of the things reps doing actually have systems out there now that you could buy and as a white label box, and then you can eventually convert it into something for your organization. The investment is worth it, right? The other thing I would say is, which is the alternative that you could do for your sales team is that you have admin support. But the thing I always tell teams, like every time I bring this up, sales reps are always like, yeah, we got admin support, we in the game. I was like, pause. I was like, let's think about this. If I give you an admin support, that means you don't do admin work. And you just said you spend half a day doing admin work. So guess what you're going to spend that new 4 hours doing for me? Selling. But guess what? I'm also going to raise your quota because you have more time to sell and earn more money. I'm going to raise your quota. And immediately half of them are like, but that's the truth behind it. So I think if management understands that the right support framework that's in place, together with having your SOPs in place, having a playbook for the sales rep, the right type of onboarding, getting them trained in some of the key skills, and giving them enough period where they could sell effectively, as in make the mistakes, stumble, fumble, eventually get it right, depending on how the sales cycle is, because that's a big factor to it. I think once you get that into play, it automatically increases your chances of keeping sales reps on, or if you happen to make a bad hire, you can immediately get them out.
Yeah, what I'm really getting a picture of is a need to be more strategic.
Yeah,
Instead of just saying that sales is sales, of course they'll sell. Bring people who
that's
could
what they
talk, who
do.
like
That's what they
people.
do
Of
us.
course they will sell. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm hearing that there's this lack of structure around it in terms of both the people management, the systems that we put in place, and even how we develop and hire these people. That's it, the thing is that I guess what is so shocking to me, because I don't know anything about sales, what is so shocking to me is that this is, for a lot of companies, your bread and butter. If nobody sells, you don't operate
Exactly.
it. So this is a real critical function, and it seems that the thought to build it out has not been there.
I would say for some companies, yes, and others, they recognize the impact, so they are making it. But I would still say for a lot of companies out there, they still need to make that investment
Mhm.
and understand. So here's the funny thing you always say, sales is really a science, not an art. And I mean it in the sense of the best salespeople follow the data, follow the numbers, and have a pattern. It's not winging it. But sadly, how we are treated by an organization, how we are hired by an organization is winging it, which again goes back to what you said earlier. Oh, he could talk, that means he could sell. No, that doesn't mean he could sell maybe in this particular job, this particular market, this particular industry. There are other factors involved. But no, no, no. He could talk, not
Yeah.
necessarily the factor, right? You
Yeah.
don't have the infrastructure in place, which means I might have to build a list on my own, which means that takes me longer to sell. I don't have the infrastructure. I'm spending more time on admin because we're still using Excel to log what we're doing on a daily basis versus a CRM versus utilizing automations. So all of these things play a factor. But again, we aren't treated like that from a scientific point. We're treated as wing it. And that's why you always see people saying, the sales team just need to go out and sell more. And I'm like, just because you hire them as sales reps doesn't mean they understand what you mean by sell more. There's supposed to be a strategy behind it. There's supposed to be data behind in terms of what they do. And we're not doing that because we keep treating sales as a afterthought, but yet we rely on them to bring the most precious resource into our organization, which is revenue.
Mhm. Yeah, this is very interesting for me because I think my interest really got piqued when you said sales is a science, and I totally get that because it's a process, a procedure, a how to, and even
Yeah.
the idea of like you could talk, sure, I could do sales, and where are you doing sales? You may be able to sell cars, but maybe you can't sell pharmaceuticals. So that whole thing about your personality being very much in tune to the product you're selling, the people, your example, the 500 units, you couldn't tell your manager because with that client, that deal would have gone. So there's a big part of it. And I'm just wondering about the testing, if there's any testing or personality testing that goes into the selection process that will say, okay, Maxine, you are better for cars, Jarrod, you are better for sales, this other person is better for events, or you're better for pharmaceuticals. Is there anything you know about, maybe not in the local industry, but in terms of your research globally, if
Oh,
there's
no, no, no.
anything that is done,
No, in the local, on the local aspect, I think a lot of companies have the Myers-Briggs and all these other
or the
tests, which is test
psychometrics,
and test.
yeah?
They have the psychometric test done and everything, which I think
Mm,
is great. But I
yeah.
also think you need to take it up another notch because again, if you have it documented of what makes a sales rep good and perform well, you could test on those things naturally just with a normal survey or quiz that you're given to the employee. Those things just kind of let you understand if it works. But let me go back on one of the previous points because you would like this. So for one of the companies I'm doing their strategy for, part of what I've broken out for them is we actually talk about the personality needed to do a certain type of job. So for
Yes.
example, because of the large amount of clients to deal with, clients are broken up into different groups. And what we're saying is we need this type of personality for these types of customers and what we manage. And we need this type of personality, but there's not just one, there are like four key types of traits so the manager knows what to look for. So again, if they're shuffling around employees for different accounts, you know exactly what personalities you're placing where. And again, because I'm building this out in a system, they could literally make the rep complete a survey. The information goes into that, and then it gives them back and tells them what this rep personality is and the type of skill sets and where they should go in terms of managing accounts. So all of this could
Yeah.
be built out and automated,
Yeah,
and
I
it
love
doesn't take
that because
while. Yeah.
it goes beyond the psychometrics. Because psychometrics may not be able to tell you what kind of what because it's two things, right? Segment the market so that I understand this client and this client's needs.
Yep.
And therefore, then I could take that information from my different, whether it's Myers-Briggs or whatever, take it and then look at it and say, okay, let's do the mix and match. You know,
Yep.
or even sometimes it could be provocative and throw a spanner and see what happens, right? If it is that you're into
No,
experimentation.
but one of the companies I was talking to, they did this to an extent. So like, but again, it's a very some people do it naturally and they don't realize what they're doing, but it's
Yeah,
genius. So
yeah,
like, I had a company who was like, oh, depending on the type of customer, all right, we'll send Jarrod
yeah,
because yeah, Jarrod can handle that.
yeah.
Or depending on the type of customer, we can't send Maxine because the customer is Muslim. He's not dealing with any woman. Like
Right.
have
Yeah,
people like that. So you want to make sure you understand who you're sending to. But
yeah,
again, it goes from a leadership perspective of understanding who you're selling to before you send out that employee there because they don't want it to backfire. So I think again, all that adds into the leadership ability of really looking at it from a scientific standpoint of who you utilize, who you lean on. And I think the other important, and just to go back in terms of what we're talking about, another key thing about this, what leaders have to understand is you need to hire better also in terms of the diversity, not in race or anything, but the style of people selling. Like, and this is not to knock it. You might tell me your opinion on this, right? I once came across a company who entire sales force was women, and I'm like, that's not good. Even though I know you sell certain ranges of products, I'm like, you should have at least 25 or 30% men, because therefore it creates restrictions. And even when I talk to them, you can hear based on some of their personalities, they're not aggressive or assertive to push back on someone. Sometimes they may need a man, they don't have the personality existing. But to me, just that balance on your team of not just like one gender or one particular race or anything like that creates the right diversity in order to one, create the right culture, but two, also two, from a strategy perspective, you have multiple aspects looking in at something to give the right thing to move forward for a team. And if you hire just based on who you like versus who could do a job, you're going to run into headaches of how people perform in a role.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that managers face, right? Managers, leaders face. It's really easy to like somebody who is from your same group, whether it is they go to the same church, there's the old boys network, and it's real, right? Because we look out for each other. We know codes, we know the
Yep,
language, we lie in the same places. So it becomes really easy to fall into that trap. And what
correct.
we lose is the benefit of different ideas, different thinking, different styles that we could really learn from. So I mean that's an age old one, right? I mean, and we see it in so many other aspects of our general life in terms of those clubs or those falsely
Correct.
created clubs, that are created where it is we deny entry to because of X, Y, and Z. I'll say no more.
So true, but again, I won't say it backfires, but I don't think it works out. And as much as we would say in sales, there's an ideal client profile. I think for sales, if you're building out your team, the diversity of your team allows you to really deploy and do stuff better. Because again, if you look at it for this particular customer, because they sometimes serve the food industry, you can't go to the Muslim barbecue places and sell.
Yeah,
They can't, 'cause with your all-woman team, because they won't take the sale.
yeah.
That's like
But
there's no
that
men. Mhm.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, because in a lot of those, and I may be wrong, people could correct me, but again, in those places, you only see men working. I think there's some women who work in different roles, but in terms of the cooking, etc., and those kind of things. So I think yeah, you really need to make sure that you can't pick who you like as a leader. You have to pick us who could actually get the job done first, and then second is if they mesh well with the team.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I'm just thinking about this woman only team, and I'm curious about the leader now. I really want to ask the leader a few questions.
No.
I'm really curious.
Oh, when we finish this, I'll tell you who it is. I won't say it on
Okay,
here.
no
But it's not the
problem.
first time I've seen it, and every time I've seen it, I'm just like, this. And by the way, I've seen it opposite here, where it's mostly men, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
is this the right fit for the market in order to sell?
Yeah.
And they always look at me weird. I'm like, just saying,
Yeah.
just,
I think it's a great question. A great question. Is this the right fit for the market? Yeah.
yeah, in
Yeah.
terms
And
of who you have to
I
sell to.
yeah, that's a great question. So, Jar, I mean, we could just stay talking forever. It's been such an
Correct.
interesting conversation. So, if someone wants to reach out to you, how best, no pun intended, should they reach out to you?
You could Google me. I always tell people this, my number is publicly listed. You could literally just say, dial Jarrod Best Michelle, help me sell. But as I think most persons who may know, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. So if it is that you reach out to me there, I'll be happy. Or you could reach me out through my website, which is jarrodbestmichelle.com. There's a contact page here that you can reach out to me and I respond in less than 24 hours. But as I say, I'm always here just to help people sell better, help companies make their revenues, and just let people make more money. Because as crazy as it sounds, I think this is a really great market to sell in. All markets are. It's just that we need to adjust the strategy. So, and thank you for the conversation. I don't think I've had anything really on sales leadership, despite the fact just actually no today self me and my business partner Lyndon Bradford we were talking about it from a different aspect, but I mean to have a conversation like this, I think it's absolutely needed.
Great, and I'm glad that you came. I mean, you shared a lot when we started talking about the problems that you saw. The main one was the accountability, that culture problem where it is we've set precedent with bad behavior. So now many years later, when we went to correct it, it's like, oh no, you can't, right? This is the way we
Yeah.
do things around here. My bad behavior included. A real talk about the role of managers around the coaching, knowing the employee, understand what is the why for that employee so that you could remind the employee. Also to the use of data, right? To detect when something is going off at your employee before it completely goes off the rails so you can help guide them back. I love the
Hmm.
notion of the 16, 16 days. You don't have to give me 24 days, just 16 days. It's such a hopeful perspective and a wonderful reframe of you don't have to give it your all every day, but 75% will get you there.
Yeah.
That yeah, this idea of re-looking at our strategy in terms of the market segmentation and also to the sales team segmentation, matching people, whether it is through whatever psychometric test that you're using, and using that to be a little bit more scientific, to bring out the science aspects of the sales. Of course, if you want your salespeople to be on the road more, then the admin systems have to work with them so we could reduce that 60% stat that you gave and really allow them more time. The question for the salespeople is, are you ready for that? Because more time means that your quota will probably go up. I
Yeah,
love the
but you make more
dichotomy of
money.
that, right?
Yeah, yeah. But you make more money. So, and that's what we in sales for, to make more money. So if you're not in it, then trust me, you need to leave. That's what we're in for. So
Yeah.
yeah, you broke it down perfectly.
Yes. And the coaching in and coaching out. I love that, the framing of that as well. So,
Hmm.
so many great takeaways, Jarrod. I want to thank you for your time today. And of course, for those of you, we are always here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We always have a guest on Leadership Unlearned and Reframed. So, thank you very much.